I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
We're the insiders. So, Scott, the Republican Party has a long history in Wisconsin, unlike the Democratic Party, of having an endorsement process. And it's been a source of a lot of support, money, individual support. And the party actually endorses people for statewide office. That went on this year. What happened in the endorsement process this year?
Well, you're right. There is a long history. And I think one of the reasons for it is to give the grassroots some sort of say on the elections. All the special interest groups in the state do their endorsements in the GOP primary. This was a chance for grassroots people to have something to say. This year, because Kevin Nicholson had essentially spent the first several months of his campaign trashing the Republican Party, he figured out he wasn't going to get the endorsement. So maybe the best thing he could do was to stop Rebecca Kleefisch from getting that. And so really, with just a few weeks before the election, after the delegates had been selected, they changed the rules this year. After many years of running it the same way as always, the old rules said they just put the candidates' names on the ballot, and if someone gets 60%, they're endorsed. If someone falls short of that, no one gets endorsed. This time they added another name to the ballot. That name was no endorsement. So you walk into the convention, and now there were 5 choices for delegates. And it was no surprise that only the people who were unopposed or essentially unopposed were able to get endorsed. Anybody who had an active contested race fell short of the 60%. Rebecca Kleefisch is the one who came closest. I'm an old Kleefisch family friend and volunteer, but she got nearly 55% of the votes. She actually came pretty close to the 60% number. None of the other candidates, because of the no endorsement answer, none of the other candidates even broke 5%. So she smoked them all, but not by enough in order to get the party's endorsement at 60%. I think in the long run, the party's going to regret that. That's the biggest Republican Party convention I have ever attended in my life. And the first convention I attended would have been in college in like 81 or something. So it's 40 years. And I've never seen a convention with that many people at it. I do remember conventions where there were 300 or 400 people. This one had like 1,800 people at it, including almost 1,500 delegates. If the endorsement doesn't mean anything or is unachievable, I think that the tallies of people who come to the convention in the future are going to go down. So Kleefisch missed the mark, didn't get the benefit that comes with being the party's endorsed candidate, but did get to show people that I think she was the champion, or at least the person who was favored heavily by the people who know the most active grassroots people in the party.
Well, you see here that Scott went on a lot longer than myself, but that's because Scott knows this and I know almost nothing. The only comment I would have related to this is it does seem to me that the dynamics are changing. People are now running against the parties. They want to be an outsider, particularly as a Republican. In fact, you're really basically, in my view, there's Trump Republicans and then there's the establishment Republicans. So it'll be interesting to see, does Rebecca Kleefisch's support there translate into the votes, or is it actually going to be to the benefit of, say, a Nicholson or a Michaels to run as an outsider, which they seem to be doing. But in addition to that, WisPolitics had a poll on the presidential at the party. How did that come out? What's your take on that?
Well, WisPolitics asked 2 questions of the delegates. The first question was, should Donald Trump run again in 2024? And then second, who would you like to see be the Republican nominee in 2024? And it was an exhaustive list of anybody you could have thought of on there. What was fascinating was we saw the same sort of answer you've seen in other things around the country, where there was strong support for President Trump running again in 2024, but there was also fairly strong support for someone else to run. And I think what you're seeing there is Republicans uniformly love what Donald Trump accomplished in office, but many of them just have never warmed up to his style, as true with other voters. And so most Republicans, I would say, want Donald Trump to run again, but many of them would like to have someone with the Trump agenda, but without the Trump style, be our nominee in 2024. Interestingly, when they asked who would you like to see be the nominee, DeSantis came in ahead of Trump. And we've seen that in a couple other polls around the country as well. It is very early. A former incumbent holds great sway in their own party. And DeSantis is the one who's gotten a huge bump from all the COVID stuff and lots of national publicity. Other people will get that bump, and you don't run a national race, of course. You start in Iowa, and it's practically door to door there. So all of that will be changed dramatically when you actually get to 2024 and we're voting on things. But right now, I think people endorse the Trump agenda in the GOP, but a good chunk of folks would like to see someone else be the nominee.
And again, I go back to the only comment I could have. Scott is obviously much more knowledgeable about this than I am. Is this just the establishment that you're getting at the Republican convention? And will you see a very different result from the actual votes that are tallied? Is the outsider position a position that would be different from what would happen there? So, even though it's obviously a defined group of people who are there and willing to be active in the Republican Party, but then who are the non-active people, but who are actively involved in at least voting, and do those people favor Donald Trump more, which is what we saw when he ran the last couple of times. But I think it's a good indication of where the establishment is in the Republican Party, and it is a little bit surprising, I think, for a lot of people. So hopefully they'll have more fun. It'll be interesting to see what they do 2 years from now when they have these kinds of elections. So I guess we'll see you next time.